こちらルーム303号室です。
Mic. One.
Mic.
Can you try it?
Mic.
Mic? Yeah.
Microphone check. 1, 2. What is this?
Microphone check.
Yes, perfect. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining Sounds from the Lab, the 4th edition. And so tonight we had the pleasure to host Aspen Hips and Arboreal Teeth for it's your first collaboration, right?
It is.
Yay, amazing. Thank you so much for pulling this up together.
Thank you.
On such a and there is so much to talk about. And I explained to you the concept of the show is more you do whatever you want, but then you kind of have to play the game of explaining what the fuck just happened, like how did you do it. If you want to talk about the why, we can talk about the why. It's mostly interesting to see what's your musical process and how this came. And in that case, of course, I guess there's a lot of talk about the video aspect. Maybe we can start with the music kind of setup. First thing I noticed is right off the bat, you don't have any MIDI connection to anything, right? So it's not synchronized.
So the only MIDI connection is from the sequencer to the synth. That's doing all the bell sounds.
Okay.
And that's only because it's easier to program and link multiple sequences on this. And you can still, kind of mess with it as it's playing.
Uh-huh.
So, other than that, that's the only MIDI, and it's basically just for tone, not for time or tempo or anything.
Okay, cool. So basically, it seems like it's a form of deconstructed modular synthesizer. Yeah.
You started asking about the how and the why.
Yep.
And it's all kind of connected because, I always enjoyed synthesizer music. But I never really got into you're controlling filters and blah, 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 blah. But then when I started learning about it and thinking about it as just controlling electricity, that's when it got interesting to me. And that's how all of this has kind of happened. Is I'm basically just flowing and basically manually building circuits between everything, and everything's kind of linked.
Okay. Wow, nice. And so what's the how do you spread out kind of sound-wise? Do you have a form of, it's more, how to say, two separate voices between you two, or it was meant to be impossible to recognize? How do you organize the kind of musical talk between two entities?
If you have an answer.
We did some thinking, and at first we were. Oh, is this thing on? Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were thinking, first off, we started out with, maybe Cody can do rhythm and I can do melody, and we started branching out like that. But I think right now, our current process is more about Cody comes up with some kind of sequence. You might have heard the bell sequence, a couple of these, and that instrument over there that I think it's called a Gene?
Yes, the Gene GX.
The Gene GX, and using that I can sort of adjust a lot of knobs real time, and this allows me to come up with a lot of stuff on the fly. So in a sense, we are sort of splitting what we're doing between somebody who programs stuff and somebody who does stuff on the fly. And the volume for this stuff is over there. And as you can see, it's a very responsive instrument, and there's a lot of stuff you can do right there.
Oh, it's volume down everywhere.
So this has no dedicated gain pot, which makes it a little annoying to work with sometimes.
Okay.
But
so it is touch sensitive, right?
It's not touch sensitive. It's
conductance.
Yeah, conductive.
Okay.
So and that's the cool thing about it.
I'm gonna
is
try
that
to show. Maybe you can demo it, because that's those two devices I'm the most intrigued because they look like they were made by an ancient civilization.
Oh yeah.
Way better.
These are 6 notes you can play.
super nice.
Actually, the smaller version, he built like a fully 24, like full 24 polyphony one.
Wow, so cool. Nice. And so, yeah, I guess we have to touch on the visuals.
Of course.
I mean, just also if you want to like come in and, you know, explain some particular stuff you really fond about, I'd be happy to.
Okay, so you mentioned this. So this is one of the more interesting things that I use. This is the landscape moon. And so like this is entirely passive. This is basically just a box of transistors that you feed CV into from different sources, and you can manipulate.
So the self-amplification, because there is basically, if you said it's passive,
yeah,
like
passive.
It's only amplified by the mixer, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know you could get like such good sub-frequencies, kind of.
Yeah, I think it's a drum unit and like sub-octave like bass thing. It's not an exact instrument just by its nature, but that's like kind of what it's geared to do.
Okay. Wow. And so last kind of, I mean, then we can see, like I had a lot of open discussion about like the whole synesthetic properties. You know, there is a lot of work that has been done, especially, I don't know if you know, maybe Olivier Messiaen. Olivier Messiaen. Messiaen is a composer from like the end of Concrete, beginning of spectral music, and he was working on this idea of synesthesia. So synesthesia being the idea that you see colors when you hear music, or oppositely, like there are some famous composers like Scriabin or Rimsky-Korsakov that had synesthesia. Oh, what?
John Mayer.
John Mayer?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I did. See, we. Oh, so cool. And so, yeah, basically, like, this is kind of synesthesia-inducing kind of system. So first, like, can you explain already, like, how this works? Because, like, I think this is super interesting, like, technically first.
So this is the Sleepy Circuit's Hypno. This is probably the most digital thing that's being used right now. It's basically just a Raspberry Pi, but it's also, again, meant to manipulate the video feeds. It's a video synthesizer. So it has certain patterns and frequencies that it'll project that you can manipulate with CV.
Okay.
And the synesthesia thing you mentioned is actually very interesting, because I didn't actually have that concept in mind going into it. But when I started getting into synth stuff, you know, I enjoyed it, but it's kind of boring to watch someone, for me, to watch someone just kind of sit there and twist knobs and press buttons the whole time. And that made me think about how can you control the whole experience, not just the aural experience, but like the whole experience of the event.
Okay. Yeah, if you can just take you have to speak like directly.
Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, actually, like, so you mentioned it's a video synthesizer. I think it touches also on the question that already music for me is something very subjective, right? We all feel and receive and, you know, kind of process music in a completely different manner. And for me, like, the visual adds, like, it's an amazing kind of contribution, as in, I guess that's been in the air for the past 20, 30 years, you know, the audio-visual works, right? And I'm wondering if you feel that there is some form of, I wouldn't say universality, not really saying like everybody should see and feel the same way, but I'm wondering, like, if you have a specific, like, you're doing this dependent on how you feel like visuals should reflect the music.
And it's also, it's not that the music or the visuals come before the other. They work together to like give the whole overall effect. And like a lot of people I see these days do everything in Touch Designer, which Touch Designer can do amazing things. This is like much more basic than Touch Designer, but it feels a bit less computer to me in a way. And that's why I enjoy doing things through this.
I mean, yeah, you say that it's a Raspberry Pi, you know. Sorry. So basically you have a computer hidden in a small box.
It's more the aesthetics of Touch Designer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I see what you mean. I think, like, you remember the first visual synthesizer, like, I always fail the name, I always say something Krungerudka, I think. Yeah, it was like purely analog kind of synthesis, but it had this thing, and I'm wondering here that this is not really, it's kind of conditioned by the music, not purely derived from the signal, right? So what you're sending here is control signal, and then the shapes are kind of generated independently of the control signal, right? Or is there a way, I'm wondering, like, what's your take on kind of, that's the paradox of what you would it's kind of the paradox of visualization or sonification. When you say sonifying something, means you take images and try to figure out, and right now it's booming on Instagram, those videos of dogs and someone does sound design on top of it. And the thing is, it's pretty complicated to like figure out what shape a sound should make.
Yes,
right?
I would agree.
So I'm wondering what is your approach on this kind of like multimedia, like the really multimedia kind of approach?
So again, like I came into it wanting to like not necessarily make or like perform music, but perform an experience. And it is technically reacting to the other synths on the table, but there are ways to link it, especially with the bioelectric like feedback stuff. You can make it feel more interactive than necessarily, again, like the purely like laptop based stuff, at least to me. And if I don't like what I'm seeing, I can just twist a knob, change it, press some buttons to get help it match the mood that I think the music is going through at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm wondering actually for like Aspen Hips, like since you were kind of playing, you were not actively changing the visuals, right? But you were playing with this kind of capacitance system.
I wasn't doing any of that.
You would.
I was just really focused on this.
That's a pretty weird statement. Yeah, I wasn't doing anything, I was smoking a cigarette over there. No, my question is more.
Right.
Did you feel like you were kind of looking at visuals from time to time?
Yeah.
And do you have this kind of feedback, like self-feedback of being influenced by the visuals, or did you feel like you were controlling the visuals? Like, is there a loop that is installed into this audiovisual kind of system?
So for me, I would say that I take a look at the visuals, I see what's going on, and then I decide what to do on the gene. So in a sense, like I'm sort of, I'm taking a look at the visuals and I'm trying to figure out what would fit the visuals best.
Okay.
Instead of the other way around.
Okay, so you feel you are responding to the visuals,
Yes,
but not so much being a active controller of the visuals.
But I'm trying to listen to what he's doing and react the visuals to it.
Oh, so it's a thrill of like you make visuals that he responds to, and then you try to fit what he's doing, which kind of, in the end, like converge to a form of equilibrium, right?
You could say it, like all throughout the performance, like what I was, because of how the instrument works, the gene works, it's like it's a lot faster for me to react. Like I can just simply touch something on this thing and something will change. So it's I would say like I in a lot of all throughout the performance, like I was sort of the person who would like dictate whether or not we would go a certain direction, and Cody would follow up with me. And we've been rehearsing this kind of like call and response kind of thing for a couple of like we had like a couple weeks. Like we had a lot of practice sessions, and this was not how we thought we would start this. Like at first we were thinking, okay, maybe I can do melody, maybe Cody can do rhythm, or maybe we can like do 2 songs where we experiment with doing something one way and then another way. But it ended up being something like this. And well, what can I say? I'm pleasantly surprised at the results. For this performance in particular, I think we aimed at creating a sort of controlled randomness where we have the moon that's like very, very random, while we have the bell synthesizer in the back, and then we have the gene as well. And we didn't want to like make everything totally crazy and insane, but we were aiming for a sort of like very slow kind of randomness, you could say. Something that's like a bit in your face, but not that much. And that was what we were aiming for.
Yeah, you're raising a very interesting point, which is, you know, I love hearing this antithetic concepts like kind of controlling randomness, which in a sense makes no sense. But for instance, there was this book, I'm sorry, completely unrelated book called Learning to Disobey. And for me, you know, there is a counter-sensual like kind of thinking that you want things to be random, but you still want to control this randomness. And there is a tension, which is what, for instance, in noise music, or even techno, for instance, is like temporal structure of elements that are themselves kind of noise, right? And I'm wondering also, like, how much do you feel you are actually pushing from something that is structured towards randomness, or on the opposite, more concrete music type of approach, where organizing events in time?
I think when we started talking, when we started talking about it, it was meant to be more of a structured thing. But as we started just messing around with the various parts and bringing ideas to the table, like it became much more of like a improvisational thing over the process. And I personally didn't want to do like harsh noise, so I wanted to do something that's, you know, musical, but not necessarily like what people would think of as music.
I mean, that's interesting, you know, what's the definition of music? In the sense that if you were to show even like music from the 60s to people from the 18th century, I think they would try to light you on fire for being a heretic. And what I'm saying is like the boundaries of what we consider music has been pushed away. Actually, this kind of sparks another conversation I'd like to have with you both, which is on this kind of use of being submerged in music. As in, you know, 20 years ago, I would say, I don't know, I'm saying a random number, but sounds coming from synthesizer was still surprising. You know, people were like, whoa, what is this bass? What is this, like, kind of process? And now it's like music, like we are, you know, here, music is playing there, you go downstairs, there is music, here's someone that makes music. And basically, we have music all the time, everywhere. And I feel like the surprise element of music is somewhat gone. I wouldn't say gone. We can still have some like interesting experience, but it seems harder for people to get surprised or shocked by like a musical element as being so new and so radically different, since we have such 5 minutes. Perfect.
That's like, I think part of it is, you know, technology is just, we have so much easier than someone in the 18th century to just find whatever.
Yeah, true.
Part of it is aging, and I think, you know, there's, especially for people that think of themselves as creative, you want to push that boundary. And as you have more available influences, you yourself want to do something that's not that. And sometimes that ends up being something else that already exists. Sometimes you actually do stumble into something new.
Yeah, Yeah, that's a good question. Like, how do you feel when you create music? It is still easy. I mean, still possible to get to a space where you feel you are contributing something new, or is it becoming harder and harder for artists to really kind of have a voice that feels different from what's being proposed?
This is my opinion. I would say in general, it is indeed becoming harder for artists to find their unique voice or do something that is purely unique to them. I feel like there's just so much information out in the world nowadays. Like if you were to dig deep inside the internet, you would indeed find something. I think like nowadays, people are really, especially like musicians around me, they are focused on something that is very simple, and they're focused on more about control, how much control they have over the amount of musical information they have, so that they can figure out and structure a way for all those simple ideas and concepts to work out in a way that is very, very different from what everybody else has done over the past few years. And I think that is that kind of like very selective subtraction that you're doing. I think like in the 80s or the 90s, it was a lot about addition. You want more information on the board. You want to see better ways, more complex ways. But now I feel like it's less about complexity and more about choosing what you want and having a large degree of control over it. And I think that has a lot to do with the layout we're seeing right now. A lot about how people might want to like find better ways to control their music through maybe, I don't know, analog methods or something like that. I do think like it has a lot to do with this modular synthesizer boom we're experiencing right now. A lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that's super interesting because actually, like, you know, I don't know if you've heard the like musical movement called Botanica.
No, I haven't.
I mean, it's kind of, you know, in the hyper pop category, and Botanica and hyper Botanica. I mean, no way. But it's basically the idea of using, like, doing sound design still. It's a very electronic rooted thing, trying to reproduce elements that are actually organic. You know, using like sounds from nature and things that are reminiscent of natural sound, even though it was created by synthesizers, which is like kind of a like way, I would say, to go back to more like naturally sounding. And at the same time, like the modular scene is exploding, as you said, which is in the exact opposite, you know, kind of super like almost sterile sounds that are like very synthetic.
Right.
So yeah, I'm wondering like if you like, for instance, how do you feel about the performance you just did in sense of how it expresses like this tension? Is it voluntarily trying to move towards a fully synthetic, like highly, let's say, synthetic electric position, or is it more just abstract from that?
For me, I'm trying to become one with the machine. You know, it's organic in the sense that it reacts to me and I react to it.
Okay, I mean, you're ready for Neuralink, and I think we're gonna finish. I mean, you have one last thing you wanted to say?
I just wanted to voice my opinion. Like,
please.
For me, like, I was thinking to put a lot more organic sounds inside at first. Like, for example, maybe we could implement the human voice. Maybe we could play a couple of really old records and have a much more organic sounding set. But then, like, you know, as we started experimenting, I noticed, okay, maybe it's better to just get rid of all that stuff, keep everything simple, keep it not too, I would say, like, avant-garde in a sense. And so that's, like, that was where we arrived.
More avant-garde. I love it.
We already have too many cables.
This just way too much stuff.
Well, thank you again. So, Aspen Hips and Arboreal Teeth. Thank you for this brilliant performance.
Thank you.
And see you next week. No, next month. Sorry. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. Thank you. Woo. Woo. Nice. Yeah.